Paris, July 10th, 1924. As temperatures soared past 90 degrees, one athlete stepped onto the track holding a stopwatch. He then set an Olympic record with surgical precision. Paavo Nurmi's dominance at these games stunned even his rivals, but the official story barely scratches the surface. Could his methods and controversy have changed distance running forever? This is the untold reality behind his legend. A stopwatch glints in the sunlight as Paavo Nurmi settles into his lane at Stade Colombes. The air is thick, the mercury hovering at 90 degrees, but Nurmi's eyes are fixed on the dial in his palm. The gun sounds. 10 men surge forward, but only one keeps time in his own hand. Each stride lands with mechanical certainty, the cinder track swallowing the heat and the noise. Nurmi's right thumb clicks the stopwatch at the first turn, his gaze flicking between the numbers and the curve ahead. The crowd, thousands strong, senses something different. This is not a man racing his rivals, he is racing the clock itself. Lap after lap, his rhythm never falters. For the first 2 circuits, 500 meters each, he checks his pace, refusing to be drawn into the early chaos. The field stays tight, but no one dares to break. At the bell, Nurmi tosses aside the stopwatch. The move is almost theatrical, a silent message. The calculation is done. He surges, legs churning, arms pumping, the gap opening with every stride. The finish line arrives in 3 minutes, 53.6 seconds, an Olympic record carved into the heat and dust. The nearest challenger is a step and a half behind. Official timekeepers confirm the result. Newspapers the next morning call him the Phantom Finn, marveling at his unflinching control. In a race where most men wilted, Nurmi found order in the chaos. The stopwatch, once a tool for coaches and officials, had become the secret weapon of the runner himself. The 1,500 meters had barely cleared from Nurmi's lungs before the officials called the next event. 55 minutes. That was all the time allotted between Olympic finals, the briefest pause to cool down, hydrate, and face the cinder track again. The Paris heat pressed down, unrelenting. Stadium thermometers read over 90 degrees, and the air shimmered above the lanes. While most runners staggered toward shade, Nurmi walked with measured calm to the start of the 5,000 meters, the crowd murmuring in disbelief. In this era, no athlete was expected to contest 2 distance finals on the same evening, let alone aim for gold in both. The official program left no room for mercy. There were no recovery tents or specialized trainers. The cinder surface, already churned by dozens of spikes, offered little bounce and soaked up the heat. Newspapers later described the schedule as punishing, a test not just of speed, but of human limits. A British reporter wrote that to ask a man to run 2 such races in 1 hour is almost barbaric. As the gun sounded for the 5,000 meters, Nurmi's rivals eyed him warily. Some had skipped the earlier race to preserve their strength. Villaridola, fresh from his own triumphs, set a blistering early pace, hoping fatigue would finally slow the Finn. Yet Nurmi's stride remained metronomic, his focus unbroken. The crowd, sensing the magnitude of the moment, rose to their feet. They had come to witness a race, but were now watching a feat bordering on the impossible, a man daring the schedule itself to break him. 9 Olympic gold medals, 3 silver medals, 12 events entered over 3 games. The numbers alone place Paavo Nurmi in a league few have ever approached, a measure of dominance. From Antwerp in 1920 through Amsterdam in 1928, Nurmi's name appeared on podium after podium, a fixture at the top of the scoreboard. In Paris, he swept 5 gold medals in a single week, a feat that stood unmatched for decades and tied the all-time record for Olympic track golds until the era of Michael Phelps. But medals only tell part of the story. Across the 1920s, Nurmi set 22 official world records, spanning distances from 1,500 meters to 20 kilometers. No other runner has simultaneously owned the mile, the 5,000-meter, and the 10,000-meter world records, a triple crown of endurance, speed, and tactical mastery. His times became benchmarks, and his records often stood for years, forcing the sport to catch up to his standard. Between 1921 and 1931, Nurmi went unbeaten in 121 consecutive races at 800 meters and longer. That streak covered national championships, international meets, and Olympic finals. An era when travel was grueling, recovery science was non-existent, and every race meant new surfaces, climates, and rivals. In cross-country and the 10,000 meters, he never lost at the Olympics. Newspapers tracked his wins like a weather report, each headline another confirmation of his dominance. The sheer volume of victories, the density of world records, and the length of his unbeaten run created a new definition of supremacy. For a generation, Nurmi was not just the best, he was the measure by which greatness was calculated. In the winter of 1925, Paavo Nurmi boarded a ship for New York, carrying little more than his racing spikes and a stopwatch. Over the next 5 months, he would line up for 55 races across the United States, from packed arenas in Boston to smoke-filled halls in Chicago and Los Angeles. The American press tracked his every move, marveling at his string of victories, 53 wins, a single loss, and 1 abandoned race. Newspapers called it a spectacle, but behind the headlines, a different story began to unfold. Gate receipts soared, promoters boasted of sellout crowds and record earnings. In Madison Square Garden alone, ticket sales broke previous records, and Nurmi's name became a draw for both fans and sponsors. But as the tour rolled on, rumors swirled about the sums changing hands. Reports in the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune questioned whether the expense money paid to Nurmi far exceeded what was allowed for an amateur athlete. Ledgers surfaced showing payments of $1,000 or more per appearance, amounts that dwarfed the $50 or $100 typical for the era. American officials, wary of foreign stars dominating their meets, pressed for answers. The Amateur Athletic Union and the International Amateur Athletic Federation launched inquiries, citing ledgers and affidavits from promoters. The controversy now centered on amateurism and money. By 1928, whispers had become formal accusations. The debate reached its peak in 1932, when the International Olympic Committee reviewed the evidence, tour receipts, correspondence, and sworn statements. In January 1932, the International Olympic Committee voted unanimously to uphold the International Amateur Athletic Federation, ruling that Paavo Nurmi was declared a professional and ineligible for the Los Angeles Olympics. Headlines in Helsingin Sanomat and the New York Times captured the fallout, while telegrams from Finland pleaded for reconsideration. But the decision stood. The most dominant distance runner of his time was barred from the Olympic stage, not by defeat on the track, but by the rules of amateurism and the economics of sport. For Nurmi, the finish line had been redrawn by forces far beyond the stadium. Decades separate Paavo Nurmi's era from today's track, but the stopwatch can still translate his numbers. Cinder tracks absorbed every stride, costing runners an estimated 2 to 5% in speed compared to modern synthetic surfaces. Shoes, too, have changed the equation. Nurmi's leather flats added another 1 to 3% penalty against today's carbon-plated spikes. Even the depth of competition matters. Fewer world-class rivals meant less pressure for record-breaking splits. When all these factors are combined, the adjustments shift results by measurable margins. For example, Nurmi's 10,000-meter world record, 30 minutes and 6 seconds, set in 1928 on Cinder in heavy shoes, projects to a modern equivalent between 28 minutes 30 seconds and 29 minutes 30 seconds. These conversion bands are not exact, but they offer a transparent framework for comparing performances across generations. Every number that follows is shaped by these variables, letting the data speak through time. Against today's standards, Nurmi's achievements remain extraordinary. Haile Gebrselassie held world records in both the 5,000 meters and the 10,000 meters, but he never attempted the range Nurmi mastered, from the mile to 20 kilometers. Hicham El Guerrouj reigned as the greatest 1,500-meter specialist, yet he focused on a single event. Nurmi's versatility, winning Olympic gold medals and setting world records across so many distances, remains almost without parallel. His stopwatch pacing, once seen as eccentric, is now the foundation of elite coaching worldwide. Modern training manuals cite his even pace method and his structured year-round preparation as the roots of today's systems. By any era-adjusted measure, Nurmi would stand among the world's best. He did not just dominate his rivals, he invented the blueprint that still defines greatness in distance running. Modern distance running still follows Nurmi's blueprint: relentless pacing, scientific splits, and the pursuit of limits. His influence remains visible on every track as records fall and technology advances. Greatness is not just measured by medals, it is measured by the standards that endure. Thank you for watching.